Do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been told to you from the beginning? Have you not understood since the earth was founded? You see, he sits enthroned above the circle of the earth, and its people are like grasshoppers. He stretched out the heavens like a canopy and spreads them out like a tent to live in. He brings peace to the naught and reduces the rulers of this world to nothing. No sooner are they planted, no sooner are they sown, no sooner do they take root in the ground than he blows on them and they wither, and a whirlwind sweeps them away like chaff. To whom will you compare me? Or who is my equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens, who created all these. He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. Why do you complain, Jacob? Why do you say, Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord? My cause is disregarded by my God. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow weary or tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. So how many of you here today received tweets from Elmo? Anybody? I'm talking about Elmo from Sesame Street, right? Okay, so did you hear what happened this past week? Anybody? Yeah, I hear some yeses out there in the congregation. So Elmo, this past Monday, sent out just a simple tweet that said, Elmo is just checking in. How is everyone doing? Now, I came across the tweet about 24 hours after it was sent. And by the time that I got hold of it, it had already received 137 million views. You heard that correctly. 137 million, and it was still climbing. Just a very simple question. Hey, just checking in. How's everybody doing? And that led to a firestorm of people responding, pouring out their heart, others trying to relate to somebody else who had tweeted or retweeted, because they had shared maybe a similar experience. Some who was just trying to speak, peace and perspective into other people's lives. 137 million. Sometimes it's the most simplest of questions that get the world's attention. In the 21st verse of the 40th chapter of Isaiah, it also opens with a very simple rhetorical question. Have you not known? Have you not heard? You see, Isaiah is doing the exact same thing. Isaiah is just trying to check in. The theme of knowing and hearing runs through the entire book of Isaiah, but today's text assumes, like many others, that its hearers are really going to struggle to comprehend its meaning. Even a brief look at the state of those listening to Isaiah's words make clear why this good news would have been difficult for them to hear, even to process. It is widely recognized that Isaiah 40 and the verses that follow is sharing what comes in the wake of them being taken from their home. In the Bible, they call it the exile, particularly the Babylonian exile. And these verses happen near the end. Isaiah is one of those peculiar prophets where he speaks a word of foreboding at the very beginning of Isaiah of, hey, if you don't change your ways, this is what's going to come. And so we find Isaiah not only sharing these words of warning, but then it happens. And the people are taken from their homes and the land that they knew and that they were familiar with and grew up. Their temples are destroyed and they're taken to a far enough place. And there they are cast into what's called the exile. A whole generation passes, and then Isaiah speaks these words. It's actually in poetic form when you read it in the Bible. It's around 530 BCE. And the prophet's just checking in. How are you doing? What's going on? How are you feeling? You see, the exile's coming to a close. That's right. The prophet is blessed enough to have been present both before, during, and after the exile. Now, different Judeans probably experience exile differently. There were probably different groups in various places. They weren't all in the same location when they got taken to Babylon. Some, like those who were with the former King Jehoiakim in Babylon itself, seemed to have received even rations from the royal court itself and may have eventually been treated reasonably well. Others, however, may have been located in what was essentially labor camps. In any case, they have been waiting a long time to go home. So long that many hadn't even been born in the land of their ancestors, the land that was native to them. Now, athletes who participate in Olympic Games know very well the importance of hopeful waiting. It is the time when long hours are spent in practice, skills are honed, timing, it's perfected. All in all, it's a very busy time, but it is waiting for the moment of the performance, of hoping for the victory that the waiting has prepared them for. But even in the best of cases, the homecoming and supposed return from exile in Babylon to Judea was an arduous one. The homecoming, this return, would have been difficult for the people it was happening to. You see, the land had been devastated. None of it had been rebuilt yet. Although the return from exile probably is imagined by us as something that was joyous, the layman Nehemiah reports something different, that there were no crowds of people at the time begging to live in this destroyed city called Jerusalem. It was without a temple or even effective walls. The comforts and protections that a city of that time would have normally afforded in the ancient world, they were all missing, gone, destroyed long ago. In fact, the people at the time had actually cast lots to see who would live there, and they even did a ritual where they blessed all of those who were willingly offered to go back. Now, after 50 or more years in exile, most of those returning would have hardly known the place. Exile was hard, but return was difficult. And so Isaiah is checking in to remind the people who's really in charge. So God intervenes in the situation in a part of the world that has seen its fair share of a succession of powerful emperors. The prophet Isaiah wants to remind the people of the ultimate and incomparable rule of the God they worship. And God wants to share that power with us so that we might be healed. It's for the purpose of healing. You see, Isaiah wants the people to know that God is willing to share God's love with anyone who wants to go and seek it. Isaiah wants his hearers to understand the significance of God's incomparable love for each and every one of them. The Lord does not faint or grow weary, the prophet writes, and he gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Now, one might think in these comforting final verses a special message for those for whom that long journey home would have been the hardest, the elderly. You see, they were the only Judeans who would have remembered Judah by the end of the exile. They would have been young, very young, when they would have been taken, and now they're returning back. The writer draws a comparison between the ones who will, quote, run and not be weary, walk and not be faint, with boys and men in their youthful prime, who will faint and fall exhausted. The message would not have been of much help to young men at the time, but it was not aimed at them. The prophet Ezra shares that when the foundations of the second temple were laid, many old people who had seen the first temple on its foundations wept with a loud voice when they saw this temple being built. Though many shouted aloud for joy, so many did, that the people could not distinguish the sound of the joyful shouts from the sound of the people weeping. You see, the memories of the elderly were not just a whole bunch of mere nostalgia. They would have been useful for those who were returning to hear. Life in Mesopotamia would have been much different. And so remembering from the elders how and where things had been done in Judah would have been something of significance for those who had never been there before. Now, I want you to just hear the rhythm of these final verses that come to us from Isaiah, that Isaiah shares. They shall renew, they shall soar, they shall run, they shall walk. Words that seem meant to carry them along this arduous journey home. And then there's this closing image. They will soar on wings like eagles. For me, it's like this poetic exclamation point at the end of this poem. It reminds them of images of the Exodus, where God first delivered them out of the hands of Egypt. In Exodus 19:4, it says, "You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." The witness of Isaiah is that from age to age, God hears the cries of God's people and empowers them in their exhaustion, empowers them in their oppression, and even in the other moments that happen today, those moments of our greatest need. Now, in some ways, this poetry from Isaiah even goes beyond what Exodus says, in that God not only protects the people with God's wings, but God also bestows upon them wings of their own. This poem marks one of the most significant events in the history between God and God's people. It is the prophet just trying to check in to see how everybody's doing and give them a word of encouragement along the way. The prophet is checking in on a people who felt the weight of the world on their hearts. So, my friends in Christ, do you ever get up in the morning and look at your calendar and know the wind is going to be at your face even before you put your shoes on that morning? Do you feel like you're running through life, never having the chance to rest? Do you think, I'm tired, my soul is tired, and only you know what burdens you are carrying, what weighs on your heart? But the prophet can relate, and so does God. Because Isaiah wants to speak into your life today, wants to speak to you with these words of encouragement, which are also available. They're not just available to a people who lived thousands of years ago. Isaiah wants to make them relevant to us today, for us living during the difficult days that are a part of who we are. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint.